Hey guys, welcome back to Self-Evident. I am so glad you're here. Today we are doing another rundown of current events. I'm Kenna Rose, and we are going to talk about the Olympics. We're going to talk about the Kids Online Safety Act that just passed the Senate. So there's a lot of stuff to cover. Let's get right to it. Most people love the Olympics just because it's fun to cheer for the best of the best in a sport, and it's a lot of fun to cheer for your country. And it's kind of cool, especially with how divided our country is, to know that Florida and California are cheering for the same team in the Olympics. Unfortunately, the Olympics this year have been a lot more about disturbing controversies than about getting along or fun competition or cheering for your team. The problems really started during the opening ceremonies when the organizers of the event used them to preach the rainbow ideology instead of to display fun things about French culture or some of those types of things. The really big one that went viral all over social media was a parody of The Last Supper with drag queens, and it was really, really horrible. And after the news kind of broke on social media, some people started to say, oh, no, it's based off of this painting about the Greek gods having a feast, and oh no, you don't really get what it was about. And whether or not they did take inspiration from the Greek gods, we have interviews with the organizers of this saying they took inspiration from Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper. So that's a really big deal because it's making mockery of God and of Christ, and that is not something that God takes lightly. But as the week went on, a lot more crazy things were brought to light with the Olympics, including suspending reporters who said things that they didn't quite agree with. So one reporter was suspended for saying that John Lennon's song Imagine was a depiction of communism. So Przemysław Babwash, a reporter from Poland, and I don't know if I said that right. I just looked up a pronunciation and I'm not 100% I got it correct, but he was suspended for saying that John Lennon's song Imagine, which was performed at the opening ceremonies, was a vision of communism, which the song kind of is a depiction of communism, so it's really kind of disturbing that they suspended him for just stating what the song is about. But the other reporter who got suspended was European sports commentator Bob Ballard, and he was suspended because he made a joke about women putting their makeup on. We'll show you the clip really fast. I found it on Not the Bee, which found it from Twitter. So
well, the women just finishing off. You know what women are like, hanging around, doing the makeup.
Outrageous, Bob. Some of the men are doing that as well.
They're doing the makeup. Yeah.
And he was suspended for that because it was considered non-politically correct, which it did kind of seem weird in where it was said, just because it didn't really fit commentary on swimming. I wasn't offended because I'm a woman and I know that women take a long time to get ready. Like, we genuinely take a while because we have a lot of stuff we want to do. But it's disturbing that these two reporters were suspended for saying what they said, especially because neither of these things was really truly offensive. Another really big one is that men are being allowed to box in women's sports. The two men who are currently boxing in the women's division of the Olympics are Iman Khalif and Lin Yuting, and they were born with developmental sex disorder, meaning that certain parts did not form properly at birth, but both of them have XY chromosomes. And they had originally boxed with the International Women's Boxing Ring until they failed gender tests and were told they could no longer compete. And one of them even had medals stripped because it was discovered he was a man. So one of the boxing matches went off yesterday morning. Iman Khalif against Angela Carini. Again, I don't know if I said that right. I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing all of this. But she forfeited the match because she said she'd never been punched that hard. Allie Beth Stuckey posted some really good information about this on Instagram. One of them in the slide that I'll put up, she asked a biologist who was tweeting a lot about this a question. Here's how he responded. He said, "The boxer failed the eligibility requirements for the International Boxing Association based on a genetic test, which indicated that he had XY chromosomes. This limits the type of DSD, developmental sex disorder, condition to only a handful, all of which include the presence of male parts. Likely 5-ARD like Castor Semenya, but also perhaps be partial androgen insensitivity syndrome. These are male DSDs, so the two boxers are biologically male." The first match went off yesterday morning, which was Iman Khalif against Angela Carini, and she had to forfeit 46 seconds into the match, and the pictures that came out of this are just really heart-wrenching. I'm not sure when the second match is going off, but I kind of hope that the Olympics get enough pushback to where they don't let it happen. Much of the Olympics this year, including that disastrous opening ceremony, have been a very clear display of hedonistic paganism, or living for selfish, sensual pleasures and worshiping the gods of something else, which is just, it's what happens when the world turns its back on Christ, and it's not a pretty picture. This is when you get people trying to call such deviancy as the things we are seeing in our world normal and right, when it really just goes against the very nature of how God created this world to work. The world is going to glorify the things that God calls sin and the things that go against the way God created the world to work. James 4 talks about how friendship with the world is enmity with God, and it's because the world is so set against God to the point where they're mocking marriage, they're mocking the value of life. And then they're even mocking Christ, and they're mocking the Lord himself. And as Christians, it's okay to see this, and it's okay to be disappointed that yet another thing seems to be going towards this path of just a downward spiral that our culture is not pulling up from and doesn't even seem to want to try to pull up from. Situations like this are a great reminder of who we belong to and the importance of a bird's eye view, because we know that Christ will win in the end, and that he's going to come back, and that he's making things new, and that he's already making things new. And we can use this as a reminder too, to be able to share the gospel with a broken and hurting world that desperately needs it. A lot of people are seeing some of the stuff that's happening at the Olympics and are saying that it's weird and they don't know why, but it's making them uncomfortable, and that it doesn't seem right. And as Christians, we know that the Bible has the answer. God created the world to work a certain way. Sin came and messed it up, and the only way to get back to that is through Christ. We need to fix our relationship with God, but we can only do that through coming to faith in Christ, because we can't fix it on our own. So every time we see something like this happen in the world, or that makes the news again, it can be a great reminder of who God is and who we belong to. Next, I wanted to talk about the Kids Online Safety Act, because with all of the talk about the Olympics, I think a lot of people missed this. But it passed the Senate almost unanimously. I think there were 3 people who didn't vote for it, and now it's going to the House, where Biden has indicated that he will sign it. So the Kids Online Safety Act is a bill that is designed to try and protect kids on social media. And we've talked about this a lot on Self-Evident, me through the articles I've written through IFI. We have done a lot about the dangers of social media, because I think almost everybody now knows how dangerous it is and know how bad it is, but don't really know what to do about it or how to help, because it's become such a integral part of society. But the bill was introduced by a Republican and a Democrat. So Senator Marsha Blackburn, who's a Republican from Tennessee, and then Senator Richard Blumenthal, a Democrat from Connecticut. So these two introduced the bill, and the bill contains a lot of really good stuff. And Not the Beast has a wonderful compilation of some of the really good things this bill is going to do, including ending doom scrolling for minors, ending using algorithms to push minors into dangerous content, requires social media sites to offer parental controls and access to minors' accounts. It limits minors' interactions with strangers. It creates time limits for minors on social media, and then it limits access to porn and advertising for minors. So it's going to do hopefully a lot of good things. The bill is not without critics, and not without critics that make some good points. So interestingly enough, one critic of this bill is Senator Rand Paul, who didn't vote for this bill because he was worried it would silence free speech. And in an opinion piece he wrote for Courier Journal, wrote, "The bill empowers the Federal Trade Commission to enforce the duty of care requirement to prevent mental health disorders. Yet, the Kids Online Safety Act does not explicitly define the term mental health disorder. Instead, it references the 5th edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders, or the most current successor edition. That means the scope of the bill could change overnight without any action from America's elected representatives." Not the Bee pointed out that this means if the American Medical Association decides to add Christianity to a definition of what a mental health disorder is, the bill could then effectively silence or suppress Christian content. But hopefully the bill will be taken not that way, and it seems like it will do some good things online. So I'm curious, what do you think of it? Do you think it's a good thing, or do you think it's going to cause problems? Thank you so much for watching this episode of Self Evident on social media at Instagram and Facebook at selfevident_podcast, or on Twitter or X at selfevident_pod. I think podcast was either too long or it was already used. So, but check it out. Give us a like, follow, share, comment, all those good things. Without further ado, let us firmly rely on the protection of divine providence. Thank you so much for watching, and this is Self Evident.